And it's such an important thing to think about too. And it changes again as the children get even older.
Exactly.
Like my demographic are going through, they're either in high school or leaving high school, and they're no longer needed as a mother because the children are independent. They may have left the home, and it's really redefining who you are and what you want, and how the next half of your adulthood, what's that going to look like? First half of your adulthood, really, from the 18 to 40, that's really high needs children, or to 45, 50. And then after that, you've got so much more living to do.
Exactly.
But what's that going to look like? Have you focused on yourself? Have you focused on your health? Have you focused on your wellness?
Exactly.
Are you happy in your job anymore? Chances are probably not, because you were just needing that money to come in. And it's interesting. Are you happy in your marriage now? Maybe not for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So it is really interesting in a woman's life how it starts to look at the different stages.
Exactly. And this is exactly like what I love about the whole topic as well, that like we are different people at different phases in our lives, and we need different things. But I think it's so valuable to be able to know, to understand, like, I mean, what happened to me before was like, I was just going and going and going, never thinking, never taking time to really listen to myself, just doing what I was doing. And years pass by, and then you look at something happens in your life that shakes you, and you're like, what am I doing? And I think this is so important, to have that awareness, like what you are doing, like with the different stages in your life. If you have the awareness, you can much easier create that life that you need then from, like, you're changing, and that's cool, but you have the opportunity to change, instead of, like, I don't know, waking up one day and be like, oh my God, my life is like so horrible. Like, this is the last thing we want, in my opinion. So.
Well, see, I'm now 54, and I go, oh my God, when I was in my 30s, 54 seemed ancient. And I'm at that age now where it seemed really old. And I'm not, because you get to that age now and you go, oh my God, this is, like, I thought the 40s were my favorite decade. I loved that 28. I loved that age, because that was pre-children, different type of area of my career, newly married. And 30s was a hard slog, little children, and we were living in a really remote property, like away from any family and friends, on a 60,000 acre property in Australia. So we were alone, my husband and I, raising children for quite some time. But my 40s, loved it. The kids were older. Then they went to boarding school because of where we lived. And now I've hit my 50s. That is truly, you've got a lot to look forward to. It is fabulous.
I love that.
It is a really amazing decade, because all of a sudden you're redefining yourself, and you're past that meet. Or for me personally, I've passed that meet in the middle where you've got the children on, keeping you in this part at one, still, and then you're the meat, and on the other slice of the bread is aging parents and looking after them, and all of the things that are happening. Well, now I lost my mum last year, and my anniversary of my dad's death today, actually 8 years ago, and then my children have left home, and so now all of a sudden I'm it, and it's great. It's so much fun. You just, it's good to prioritize.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much fun. It's like, I mean, it's the age is always like, I think we grew up in that age is like not necessarily great, and that your youth and your prime and your, your looks and all of that are so important. But I totally agree. Like, for me, the aim in life is to, to create that life that when I'm actually old, and not necessarily like the late retirement that we learned as well, where you work all your life and then you turn, I don't know, almost 70, and then you live. I want to live my life all the time, but I want to have that all the days where I can really say, okay, like, cool, I can do anything I want with the kids, without the kids. Like, they're independent. They are still coming to me. Like, I'm still their mom to like fall back on and everything, but to really like what you're doing, to just have fun. And that's, hopefully I can manage that.
You can. And I think a lot of the time it was always, they say 40s and you're 30 and 50s and you're 40. And you go, no, I've been those ages before. It's nothing like that. It's completely different. And I think now there's more people talking about this particular age, and once you get to your 40s and get to your 50s, on how it can look. And because prior to that it was just seen, it was unseen. You never talked about how you're changing as a person, how your body's changing, how all of these different things that are happening to you. Now it's starting to be discussed and talked about more openly, and that's such a good thing. And it's a good thing for young women with young children, seeing the generation ahead of them, 10, 15 years older than them, what it's going to look like or how it could look like. It doesn't necessarily have to be a really negative thing, which is wonderful.
No, this is why I was so excited that you would talk to me, because the age difference, obviously, and I don't have my mom anymore, so it's like just interesting to see how things are different, even for you now, than maybe for my mom, who lived like in a different environment and everything, where you're kind of a role model for me, because I've known you for a while, and to like look up and see what you're doing and how you've shifted things. It's really nice to see that it's possible at any age, and like you said, with the children out of the house, there's different opportunities. But I know as well, like you have a very strong bond with your family, and this is so beautiful. Which it's that balance that we're always kind of striving for, but
that's right.
Not necessarily, like in my experience, is that 100% motherhood is always a good thing. I feel like, when you open up as a mom, as a woman, you show something different to your family as well, to your children. And this is where the change comes in. Like what we are going through now is probably going to look very different for them when they grow up, and what your children at their age, when they reach your age. Like, it's just so interesting to see that.
It is really interesting. And my children aren't at the age now, they're only their early 20s, where they're, who knows what it's going to look like by the time they have children and their children get a little bit older. So you're that much further down the road than what they are, and it's just interesting when your children are late teens, what it's going to look like for them. But having you doing what you're doing is so important, because your children can see a woman doesn't have to be confined to a certain role to do a particular type of a job. They can, definitely still mum's always there. Mum's an important part of the nucleus of the family, yet mum is also forging her own path and her own career, and she can change, not necessarily have to be along that same path. And that's what, like, to hear my kids now say, I'm really proud of what you're doing, you go, oh, isn't that wonderful? Because I've always been a teacher, always, that was my career path for 30 plus years. And all of a sudden, 2 years ago, you go, no, I can't do it anymore. I need to change and to do something completely different, out of your comfort zone, putting yourself out there, knowing other people are going to have all their sorts of opinions and things, whether or not that they like it or not, and you go, no, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm just going to do what I do. So your children are seeing that from the get-go, because they're young enough, which is amazing. Mine have seen it now, probably through young adult eyes, but always seeing their mum just has changed, and that giving it a go, and they know that I give them permission from what I'm doing, that they can do whatever they might. They don't have to have this straight path. They can change and the word pivot. They can pivot, and it's, they're not locked in. And that's really great to know they've got the freedom to do that. And I've got the freedom, and you've got the freedom.
Exactly. I love that. And were they skeptical, or were they more like excited when you told them, or they had no opinion at all?
They were really excited. They were really excited, because they knew that I was not happy in what I was doing, and they were just excited that I did something about it, and to do something that they knew that I'm enjoying. When your children see you thriving, that's really important too. And when your children see you that you're not thriving, it's also important to show them what you can do. That there are solutions. That they may not always be easy, and it may not always be comfortable, but there are solutions that if you've got the means to. Not everyone has the means to, and I understand that, but if you've got the means to, that there are ways that you can navigate through and change things for yourself. That's really important.
And in terms of motherhood, when different ages of your children, was there like a period where you, what was your favorite, or like, because I'm curious, the teenage years, obviously my big one is 7 now. And I could see how we're already, I don't know, I feel like sometimes I have a very, very little teenager in the house. So I'm just curious, like, yeah, was there a period that you felt as a mother you enjoyed the most, or is there really like this interesting thing in all the ages?
They are all the different ages are tricky. They're hard. You know how you think, oh, I got through that one's going to be easy once you get to this stage, but every stage has got really hard parts and absolutely beautiful, delightful parts to it. I wasn't one of those mothers who enjoyed the infancy stage. Like, I felt like I was a really bad mum because I didn't enjoy it. And I'd have lots of friends who would say how much they loved it, and I bloody hated it. I really did. And again, because we were in a remote property, my family were 8 hours away from me. My closest friends were 2 hours away. Wow. The closest neighbour was nearly, they were in there. The closest neighbour was about half an hour away, and they were quite elderly, so they weren't of any help. My husband and I were really stuck on a place, and that was a bloody hard slog. And I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't. And I felt bad saying it. I had, gosh, when you ask for what sort of children you like, they were absolutely dream infants. You know, they slept from 6 weeks of age. They had never had reflux. They were dream babies. Toddlerhood, they were holy terrors. They in everywhere, doing up trees, down trees. They'd be in all the sorts of mischief. But you could see, I love just to see their personalities begin. And I'm an early childhood educator, so my favourite age is between the ages of 5 and 8. Okay. I taught my children on distance education because we were in a remote location, so I taught them for a number of years. I was called the home tutor, and they had a school of distance education, which was about 300 kilometres away from where our property was. Okay. So that was interesting. And then I went back to work. Because we're so remote, I had to stop my work as a teaching principal and live on the property and raise the kids that way because it was too far away from my workplace. And then we moved when the children were about 8 and 5, just so they could get more opportunities for learning and a bit closer to family. But I ended up moving to another property which was closer. And I ended up being my daughter's teacher. Like, she was stuck with me one-on-one in the classroom for all of those years, and then we moved to the mainstream, and she was stuck with me again, the poor kids. So, but I think, and the years that I enjoy is probably teenage was tricky, but again, my kids went to boarding school because of where we lived, our remote location. I loved that stage as they got older, but I'm really loving now. I'm really, really loving them as young adults. I'm loving seeing who they become and who they're becoming, how through the life experiences that they've had as in our family, and also when they've been away at school, how they deal with things. And I'm so proud as a mum to see the young adults that they've become. You know, they're amazing, just amazing. So I think, and it comes with its challenges. Like, they have their ups and downs now, and you are always on mum duty. Yeah, you are always, that never goes, truly. And sometimes it's even harder because you've got to let them learn really hard.
I was gonna say, like, you know, when they're little, you're involved, you do the things, you pull the strings. When they are young adults, you need to let them make their own mistakes. Have them have some struggle to exactly. I mean, this is always when looking back, like at that age for myself with my parents, I have to say, I mean, every parent has their positives and their negatives, but I think they did that really well with me in terms of letting me do the things I want to do, even if they're not necessarily agreed. And looking back, I really like respect them for that, because I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's easy to kind of sit there and watch your child doing the thing you know is not the right thing, you know it's going to cause some problems, and you're still going to sit there and sit it out. Like, I'm really have respect for that. I'm wondering how I will be in that age. I mean, I know I will manage as well, but right now when they're still little, it's hard to imagine, you know.
Well, you will, because obviously your parents were great role models for you, so you saw that. And when you've got a lovely relationship, as you know, with your children, that will just evolve. And you'll make mistakes. That's the whole thing of parenthood. It doesn't come with a manual.
No.
And what may have worked with one child, one of your children is not going to work with the other child. So it's always, you're doing things on the fly the whole time, and you just hope, cross your fingers, and that they are going to be okay, and you can just obsess that you've done the wrong thing. But you can't go back. You can't go back and change it. You can just learn from it and do it differently the next time.
Exactly, so true. And I think only time will show anyway, because I mean, there are discussions about certain things and new kind of parenting styles and this and that, but I think only time will show how these kids turn out. And I think so far, I think they're on the right path. So we'll just keep trying to do our best. And I think, giving them the opportunities, and then hoping that as young adults, they know the right thing, and they're gonna make themselves happy. I think this is also like the thought of like them being happy and them having the choices. That's just really, this is, like you said, you moved away from that property because you felt it was just too much of a container. Because we want them to have opportunities, isn't it?
You do. And it's interesting, as they get older and at different ages, you let that umbilical cord, you let it out that little bit further, and you bring them back in again, and you give them that little bit more space, and it's that constant letting go, bringing back, letting go, bringing back, and always within the container of having safe boundaries around them. And that's one thing that my children look at now. I think sometimes they saw my husband and I, we may have been fairly firm, didn't let them get away with much, and gave them freedoms, yet when we thought that it wasn't going to be safe for them, even though some of their friends' parents let them go to parties and things, and we'd say no, or they had certain rules to go if they were to go, they would have hated it at the time. And they did hate it. It wasn't they would have, they did some decisions, but now they are so thankful. They are so thankful of what having boundaries and knowing, I suppose, and experimenting in a safer way than what perhaps some of their children had that came from families with very few boundaries. So that's always something to remember, as a mum, as they get older, that
it's true.
They may not like it at the time.
No, exactly.
They look back.
The teenage age with the parties and all of that, I had the same. But looking back, I'm glad. I'm glad they kept these boundaries, because I know otherwise. No.
So am I.
Would have not been good. So, it's needed, and that's the thing. Like, we parents, eventually we know what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad, and sometimes they don't like it, especially around.
No, they don't.
It's for their good, and it's good. Like, I personally experienced your children. Looking back now, they know this was the good thing. So it's just sticking to what feels right for you as a mom. And writing it out until the age they come back to you and they say, Mom, you did well.
Yes, and they're lovely, and that, oh my God, my children tell me things that I would never have dreamt of telling my parents. Which is lovely for me, because I just wouldn't tell them some of the stories, whereas my children, I'm sure I don't know half of it, but they tell me far more than what I would ever dream of. And so that's lovely to know that they trust me with that information, and they feel safe with telling me certain things, even though they probably know that I may not always approve, and my husband always approve, but they're very forthcoming with that sort of thing. So of that, I'm very grateful. I must have done, not just me, we must have done something right as well. And that's another important thing, is to work together as a, if you happen to be in a marriage or a relationship, to have that consistency. Because kids are smart, aren't they? They just know how to play one off the other from a very young age. And so to be consistent and to have a plan beforehand when you think something's going to be brewing, so they're not you know, that's so important, because I've seen a number of my friends not have that, and that's made it very difficult for them.
Yeah, so true. Having these conversations as well. Like, I mean, we had a few things, like my big one, Lucas, he is in this stage of like having the first kind of social fallouts, friend issues, and like this kind of thing, and maybe a bit of emotions for someone, that kind of, you're like, how do we handle that? This is new. What do we do? And like, I think it's very important to speak about this with your partner, husband, exactly. And like you said, like to kind of know what's the strategy, what's the plan, where are we headed? Because every age just throws you some new things, and you've got to figure it out.
Yeah, and what worked at 5 is not going to work at 8. No. It's not going to work at 12. Is not going to work at 15. So it changes all the time.
Exactly.